this is my review of Assassination Classroom. Okay, so in this episode, Class 3E has to infiltrate the hotel at the top of the cliff to save their classmates before they die, and they only have like an hour to do it. So they're kind of on a time crunch to do it. Karasuma, and when they get there, Karasuma and Irina are immediately skeptical about how they should just go with the original plan, pointing out that it's too heavily guarded and also looks way too steep. But then is thrown for a loop when the students actually climb up the cliff, no problem, and then to pop a squat and ask him for orders. And Karasuma has no idea how to respond to this, but Koro Sensei points out that they've been training for this and that they're very skilled assassins at this point, and that he should trust them since he's got a team of 15 people under his belt, including Ritsu, and that he should be more willing to take a leadership role rather than just do what the guy wants and just go with it. So with that, Karasuma gives them 5 minutes to memorize the floor plans and figure out all the possible layouts, and then they'll proceed to climb up the cliff and infiltrate the place. At which point, and after doing that, Class 3E scales the cliff, and Karasuma as well, and to his chagrin, he also has to carry Irina and Koro Sensei up the cliff. Since we've established Koro Sensei is in a little plastic bag and is being carried around in that, we've established that he's now the size of a baseball, so he doesn't weigh all that much, but Irina, he is a full-grown person and he's a little bit annoyed. And the students remark that she's most likely doing this because she doesn't like being left out. So, yeah. With that, they begin climbing the cliff. Karma being better than pretty much everybody else. But eventually, they do reach the top of the cliff, and as they're climbing, Nagisa remarks to himself that who this guy is, since he clearly knows about Koro Sensei and clearly knows about the class. So clearly, this is somebody they dealt with before, and is curious as to know who he is. But as they're planning out the layouts, Nanami and Takabayashi, we've seen him before, but he kind of only really took a major role this episode. Nanami, Akuda, and Takabayashi are treating the sick. They're the 2 students that left behind to treat them. Mainly because they both have medical know-how and know how to do this kind of stuff. And Manami is a little concerned as to how this could be happening, and wonders if it could be spread by an airborne illness. And Takabayashi merely remarks that it's not, and that it would have to be ingested for it to actually do anything. And Manami begins to wonder who could actually plan that out to actually poison them. But in any case, it cuts back to the other half of Class 3E, the ones that's not poisoned. And they begin to go through a plan, and Ritsu pulls up the entire floor plans to point out where they can actually go safely and how they can actually get up, and remarks that it's very confused, and basically just shows a big confusing series of walkways and stairs and all that, a bunch of other stuff. And when Kaede asks why it's laid out like that, one of the other students merely just remarks that it's basically to prevent terrorist attacks, which ironically enough is being used to shelter a terrorist. So, I mean, it worked. I mean, it's just a little bit amusing that that's how it works. But in any case, Ritsu unlocks the side door and they proceed to go in. But clearly find out that the lobby is heavily guarded and that they have no chance of slipping past. And Karasuma quickly runs out of options and wonders maybe they should split up. But also realizes that's a bad idea. At which point Irina just brazenly tells them that they should just go ahead and do it. At which point she proceeds to strut out into the room and pretends to be a drunk pianist who has come there to perform, and then proceeds to seduce all of the guards with her piano skills and body language. So at which point she signals to the rest of the group that they have 20 minutes to get through before they realize what's going on, and they silently thank her and go on their merry way. At which point they realize that they underestimated Irina just a little bit, because as it turns out, she is a skilled assassin that can wield multiple blades and is skilled at infiltration. So they realize they should stop judging their books by their cover, and then proceed to go up the stairs, and they proceed to go through up to the 3rd floor, And as they're going through the hallway, Koro Sensei remarks that they need to pretend like they own the place. Since they immediately wonder if they're allowed to be here, and as it turns out they are, because this is where the very wealthy send their kids to have fun. Basically, they go to this hotel which the guy has set up his operation in, and proceed to tell him that they just need to pretend like they belong. And they do that. They just kind of walk through and nobody bats an eye. They kind of blend in with the rest of the other guests, which works out well for them. It just kind of shows them just strolling on their merry way and just going through. And eventually they do get to the third floor and try to play it a little bit. And at which point, Tarasuke and his goons and his remaining friends get a little bit cocky and try to run ahead. But at which point they see Guy, and one of the students, Fuwa, immediately realizes that something about the guy is off and pulls them up and tells them to back off and get back as soon as they can. At which point Kurasuma jumps at her skills and pulls them out of the way. And it's a good thing she did that, because as it turns out, this guy is an assassin named Smog, whose main specialty is poisons. And case in point, he whips up a protective mask and sprays Kurasuma with full blast right in the face with a homemade poison he made himself. So Kurasuma is very dizzy and disoriented, and is a little confused as to how he was actually caught. At which point, Fuwa reveals that she's actually a very skilled detective, very skilled at detective work. And not only was she able to deduce it by his face, but that they were separate, but that the students were separated the whole day, and that the only time they were together was as after the assassination attempt, and even then they didn't eat any food after that, and two of them were away editing, and they were sick as well. So, and because the two guys were sick as well, she deduces that the guy was most likely the guy who served them the drinks. And Smog is a little impressed that they were able to do that, and as is Kaede and Nagisa, and asks her how she figured out her detective reasoning and how she came to that conclusion. At which point she reveals that she's a Shonen Jump fan, and it kind of just segues into an advert, which is really funny. It's just you're watching an anime, and all of a sudden there's just an ad in the middle of the anime. It's great. It's a great little segue joke, but Kaede and Nagisa are a little annoyed at the fact that they just got tricked into listening to an ad. So there's that. But in case, Smog realizes that he needs to go for backup, since and proceeds to leave, only to discover that Class 3 he has blocked off both exits, and Kurasuma, while poisoned, is still well enough to fight. And case in point, Smog believes that he has a chance, and proceeds to go for another poison, but is quickly kicked in the face and knocked out, and then is tied up and hid under the furniture, where he won't be discovered for a while. So, yeah. But in any case, Kurasuma passes out for a brief moment, but is mostly fine, and with help is able to get to the next floor. And while they're going to the next floor, we actually meet Gastro, who is another assassin that they're going to need to contend with, and is actually talking with the boss about their organization. And Gastro is a little bit nuts. He basically treats his guns like they're a gourmet meal, hence his name. He believes that you need the right mix of ingredients to make a gun work right. So, yeah, he's a little nuts. But he also proceeds to tell his boss, as well as the audience, what each of the assassins do. He's the gun specialist, obviously, and then we already know who Smog is. He's the poison expert. But there's a third guy. That we haven't been introduced to yet, and his name is Grip. And Gastro even openly remarks that Grip's a little weird. He's not a big fan of Grip and how he operates. And sure enough, when Class 3E eventually gets to where he is and the hallway he's defending, he's just kind of sitting there against the window isn't really interested in them. But he does know but he does hear them coming from a mile away and remarks that as well. And they find out they also notice that he's talking a bit funny, And while they're unable to place immediately, Karma remarks that he's talking like a samurai would. And also to as a showcase of his strength, once he discovers that the kids are there, he breaks the window with his bare hands. He just flexes his hands, and then the window just snaps and breaks, and there's just a big dent where his hand used to be. So, and he remarks that he's not really interested in fighting a whole bunch of amateurs, and then proceeds to pull out his walkie-talkie and call for backup, only for Karma to grab a plant from nearby and smack him with it like it's a sword. One of those, what are they, ficuses. He grabs a ficus from the nearby he grabs a ficus by the branch and just smacks his walkie-talkie into the wall, pointing out that he shouldn't call for backup since it's not a very good first opening move, especially since he against a bunch of so-called amateurs, as he put it. And while Karasuma tries to stop him because he feels like that Karma is being his usual arrogant self and that he should probably intervene before something happens, Kura-sensei remarks that that's not the case and that he should let things take their course. Remarking that usually Karma has his nose up at people and is literally looking down at him, but here he's got his head down. He's serious. He's focused. He's let go of his air of arrogance to take this guy seriously, and points out that this guy is most likely going to be in a big trouble, because if Karma is taking somebody seriously, then that's a big problem. But in any case, the guy kind of decides to fight Karma anyway and whips his jacket off, and that's where the episode ends. So yeah, we never actually see the boss. He's all shadowed out, and all we hear is a distorted voice. But I think the reason they did that was to make it so that you couldn't tell who it was until after it happened. But it's interesting though. He's basically taken up residence in a hotel, and now one by one, each of the different students with each of their different specialties are going to have to climb up to the top of the tower and deal with each of the different assassins. And there's 3 of them, so that's going to be interesting. Each one has their own specialties, and it could be fun to see how they actually fight against Class 3Es. But in any case, yeah, that's my review of Assassination Classroom. What did you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Facebook and on Twitter in the description below. And also, be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month. It really helps me out, and you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks and my way saying thanks. So be sure to check those out in the description below as well. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!